You just get forced into it because of the trends or job opportunity, and that settles into mediocre careers and life. But the main idea was to make that touch sensor human skin-like. Can you build a human-like prosthetic arm that is controlled by the brain, controlled by the mind?
A human in the loop, AI-assisted, technology-assisted physician should be our go-to in the long run. Namaskar and welcome to today's episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast. This podcast is your resource to help you make informed career decisions. Know what is exciting and what is the in thing, what is the future going to be like in various disciplines of science, technology, and engineering, and then make informed career decisions. As we like to say, this is your future simplified. This podcast is brought to you by IITM Global, an initiative of the Office of Global Engagement at IIT Madras. IITM Global is our platform to help take everything IIT Madras to the world stage. Our startups, our thinking, our philosophy, our teaching, our research. Learn more about the efforts of IITM Global in the link in the description below and see how you can partner with them. Today's conversation is something I've been looking forward to, a topic that's very dear to all of us, and I'm sure we will all learn where this world is headed. My guest today is Professor Nitish Thakor, a professor of Biomedical Engineering at Johns Hopkins University, one of the best in the world at everything healthcare. Welcome, Nitish, and it's wonderful to have you in our conversation today.
Thank you for your invitation. Delighted.
Let's talk about the doctor's office as we know it today. And, you expand it out and a larger clinic. There's so much instrumentation and electronics around there. From the early 1800s, when probably the stethoscope made its way into a doctor's office and onto the doctor's shoulders, the perpetration of electronics and instrumentation into healthcare has been absolutely mind-boggling. Tell us a little bit about how far we've come and what has it done for outcomes?
Well, it's a very broad question. I can immediately think a doctor's office such as my wife's, and it's traditional doctor's office, asking questions and stethoscope and thermometers and ECG machine. And I can also think about Johns Hopkins Medical School, a hospital, where you can be in ICU with the most advanced instrumentation, imaging equipment, and even surgery where there's robotic surgery. So, you can span the whole world that way. And I don't think it's any different in India. There are clinics and people take care of themselves at home, and that there are outstanding hospitals with latest robotic technology. So I think it's spanning the whole thing. And let's go into some specific based on your question to give you some example of where we have come. I mean, I can talk about my work in prosthetics, for example, where, some artificial arm, the most famous is Jaipur foot.
Yes.
Right? It's a wooden club foot. And on the other end of the spectrum are these highly mechanized space-age materials and all that involved in the design of a foot, where an amputee wearing those advanced legs can run Olympics as an amputee did and compete. So I think that's the world of technology and I guess world of biomedical engineering.
And your own journey into this world of biomedical engineering started at IIT Bombay, studying electrical engineering, was it? Tell us a little bit about...
I can relate to everyone. Even today, I hear getting swept into IIT Dream. I thought I was going to be a physician, maybe a brain surgeon. And it was, again, that IIT Dream and mania that took over. And once I reached IIT, I thought, what am I doing here? I would like to do something bio or medical. And so that was back in 1970s, where I thought, well, is there something like engineers can do in biology and medicine? And I think this is a hugely missed opportunity, because today young people are swept into AI and data science and computer and IT, which is the crunching data for bank or insurance. Why don't you do that for medical health, better care of human beings, whether in India or anywhere in the world, with emerging technology, right? What are the emerging technologies that everybody gets swept in? Virtual reality and robotics, but they're equally applicable in medical. So anyway, what I did was went to library there and found a journal called IEEE Transactions of Biomedical Engineering, and I saw a paper there about how to design an electrocardiogram circuit. And that's what I did as part of my BTech project. Since then, I worked on pacemaker, defibrillator, then brain monitor, and now lately brain-machine interface. So life evolves. And I think what you're trying to do is amazing. Keep your dream up. Don't get swept in by popular buzz, but rather stay with your dream. It can work out.
Wonderful message very early on as well. That you can, in today's world, you cannot practice engineering without knowledge of other disciplines, and you cannot practice medicine without a good dose of engineering.
Maybe I really want to point that out to the audience, right? Because in India, when I was a student, A is engineering and B is medicine. You are as if like there are no choices in life with A or B. And what you can do is to make your choice. For me, it is between A and B. But, many other things coming out of humanities and even business and finance are equally applicable. So, yeah, you make your choice. But what biomedical engineering, which is what we are talking about, is the synthesis of biology, medicine, engineering today, AI and data sciences, and for human health, right? What better things we can do than human health?
Looking back, what was the most unexpected turning point, you would say, that helped you really pivot hard into biomedical engineering from engineering that you learned at IIT Bombay?
I think it's a beautiful question. I mean, one could think of one epiphany, but it sometimes can be a little thing that are inside you or opportunistic. I had a medical student in my building who was operating on a frog, and I was so curious that I want to myself, this was in school, frog heart and see its beating. That's biomedicine and love for that. As a school student, there was a Science Today was the magazine. Today, there's so much information. My days, there was only one science thing. And I could design these little electronic components that I went to Bombay's Chor Bazaar to pick up some electronic components. Then you fast forward and, somebody in my family got a heart attack and we say, oh, how do you monitor the heart? That electrocardiogram beep, beep that you see. Can I design it? And, it's kind of like a series of steps that you can take. Somewhere an opportunity knocks, somebody gives you a foot in the door. I guess for me, it was getting into IIT or getting a scholarship to do PhD. So, steps come many times. It's not just one time in your life. And you sort of carpe diem, right? Seize the moment. That's the very famous expression, carpe diem, seize the moment.
What was your PhD thesis on? And where did you study?
Yeah, so remember I said that I was in the library and the paper I read was by Professor John Webster, whose textbook of medical instrumentation is still the most famous. He's just passed away at age 90, but his book is studied world over. And so his paper, Designing Electrocardiogram, was what I did as my BTech project. So of course I wrote to him, can I come to do graduate studies with you? And he gave me a scholarship. So, that was kind of foot in the door. And at that time, a doctor came to say, electrocardiogram, you're monitoring only in ICU in a hospital, but people can get heart attack anytime, or can you monitor 24/7? And so we got a research project grant. And at that time, what microprocessor, this little computer chips had just come out in mid-70s. Mm-hmm. So our idea was to apply that little microprocessor chip to monitor your heart.
Okay.
I was probably one of the first to do that for medical application. And I built a monitor that exactly, I carried it around all day, all night, set up an alarm, heart rate is too low, too high, it would give an alarm. And that was my PhD thesis, so microprocessor-based arrhythmia or abnormal heart monitor.
That's, I mean, even today, it's a device that's used quite widely to monitor, to really diagnose arrhythmia. This clearly was ahead of its time, and a classic example of the world of electronics enabling a development in healthcare. In the whole process, there is also someone who wants to understand both worlds. I think, as you said earlier, carpe diem happens when you want to be that person, right? So you have to not be afraid of either the world of medicine or the world of electronics. Did that describe you as a young 21, 22-year-old?
I think it's a great question, right? I think that's why I said A or B, those kind of divisions. So today, go into AI or data science it's extremely arbitrary and it rarely fits anyone. You just get forced into it because of the trends or job opportunity, and that settles into mediocre careers in life. On the other hand, when you either follow your dream or create your own dream, right? I mean, any one of you can create a dream. You can start a company. You can be a scientist, whatever you want to do. Then I think it evolves, right? And at moment for me might have been, say, a microprocessor or a heart. When I went to Johns Hopkins, this was an accidental meeting with a brain surgeon and an anesthesiologist. Said, can you monitor the brain during an operating room procedure? There were no brain monitors, and that set me to studying the brain. There was U.S. took part in different wars. It's unfortunate, but soldiers in the war lose their limbs. And there was a challenge thrown to say, can you build a human-like prosthetic arm that is controlled by the brain, controlled by the mind? So that was, 2007, and we switched over from brain to work on prosthetics and this topic of brain-machine interface. And now it's become highly popular because, Elon Musk and Neuralink and companies like that start talking about building brain-computer interface. So, yeah, you can make your own dream and follow it, or opportunity knocks and take it.
So tell me a little bit about where are we with brain-computer interface? First of all, let's define it. What is a brain-computer interface? When do you say it's working?
Yeah, so it is one of the more exotic and glamorous looking thinking, because once you think about brain, it's always amazing and mystical. And we always think computers cannot do what human brain does. So how do you connect to that brain, learn from it, do something? But it all actually started with a health disorder called ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's a terrible disease where your brain is intact, but your nerves, and it's what's called myelination, and insulation breaks down, and the person progressively loses all body functions. So the only way you can connect to that person is through their mind, through the brain. And so that was an incentive to say, can we study the brain waves, what I call electroencephalogram, to open up the window into the mind, into the brain? But once that took off, there was other ideas. Oh, how about a paralyzed individual? Can they use the brain wave to capture the signal and control a prosthetic arm? And once you start opening up, new opportunities come about. And now, as magical it seems, I'll do something that's very magical, right? So I'm holding a phone and I stare in it and I touch a couple of buttons and I can talk to my wife in US. And imagine 10 or 20 years ago, somebody would say like, what? How can face and video and audio go across the world and we can communicate? So that's magical, but we take for granted. So now put the phone down. And why is it so impossible to think that brain waves, decode the brainwave message? So you need to know good mathematics, good engineering, good computer science. And then from there, you interpret the brainwave and decode into a message and send it to a computer or a robot or a prosthetic arm. So it is magical because to studying brain is not easy. but it is doable, and that's where we are.
So it's all about measuring the sort of the electronic activity or the electromagnetic activity in the brain, and decoding the thoughts into text, essentially. Or what do you do there?
This is very heavy choice of words, so we have to kind of break it down a little bit. So one is the brain waves that are called electroencephalogram that we record from the scalp. Today, at the cutting edge, there are micro electrode, tiny wire-like electrodes that are put in the brain, so you can decode from individual brain cells, maybe hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them. So, work gets advanced. Now you take that brain cell or brain wave convert into an algorithm to say, what is it? The easier where it started was movement, that my desire to think and move my arm, right? That's a message. So I must decode that step by step. Where we are today is demonstration that we can put the electrodes, the sensors in the part of the brain, left side of the brain, left area, what's called temporal lobe, where speech is encoded. So if you could do that, you can now decode speech. So now there are first demonstration of brain to speech.
Yeah.
We don't know where it'll go. By the way, coming back to your question, see, I now know a little bit about brain, a lot. Actually, I took a class in neuroscience, memorized every part of the brain like neurosurgeons do. Now I've forgotten. And also engineering, because I talk the language of electronics and decoding, which is mathematics, and then computer science. And you put it together. And so, it can, once you learn to put it together, it's not A or B. It's biomedical engineering to put it all together.
Very nice. So once this technology is, let's say, perfected, our communication methodologies with machines would be far richer, would go beyond keyboards and mouse and visual interfaces, and really be able to communicate in a much more rich fashion. Is that the end goal of this effort?
Well, remember, look at and listen to your own words, right? It's almost, again, if you are a young person, it sounds magical, visual, and, so many things.
Yes.
And that's why I picked up the phone and said that, right? I mean, we are taking it for granted, but there is a picture, sound, audio, video. Little vibration could be even indicating touch. So there are a lot of these things are becoming amenable to practical solution. So now in the field of brain-computer, brain-machine interface, I tell you, the unknown is always there. So, there is a phrase called there are known knowns, things we know, and they are known. Known unknowns, certain things we know, but certain things are unknown. We don't know. And there are unknown unknowns. Yes. We don't even know what we don't know. So in this, who am I to say where it'll go? I mean, we started with this prosthetic control with brain waves and neuron signals. And now I'm watching people do this speech processing. I understand it, but, I see that journey happening. We don't know where it'll take us. There are people who are futurists who will speak like you did. Amazing things will be possible. Why not conveying emotions? Or a little spooky and exotic, reading the mind. And then there are people who will worry all the time. Anytime you do this progressive, higher-end research, can I read somebody's mind? And people start imagining potential unethical or improper use, right? There's always, in any technology, there is this. The phone can be used for good and bad, right? So this kind of brain-machine interface will go where it'll go. I don't know, somebody listening to us will find a new application.
Wonderful. I think that, like you had the microprocessor as an enabler, this could become the next enabler. You talked about touch. You worked on touch for some time. Touch, and I'm going to bring pain in, because I think these are the emotional, touch and pain are still, in my mind at least, the last frontier of sensory signals that are yet to be cracked. You developed an E-Dermis in your lab. What was the motivation and what does it do?
Yeah, it is a combination of unmet need, which is how a lot of science, technology, research goes, that somehow you identify certain things that are not there. And that was the case with prosthetics. They could, at some point, move, you can control them, but they had no feeling. And so the very simple step is a touch sensor. The same thing that's on your phone, right? You touch and phone picks it up. But then our skin has what are called receptors. So again, this is a little biology you need to know. And they pick up touch. They pick up touch, vibration, temperature, and even pain. So a prosthesis to be more human-like must capture all of that. And so that's how it started. It also, we are both professors and many of you are students. It's always a partnership between a professor and a student. A precocious student, a encouraging professor, idea exchange occurs. And this idea of E-Dermis came with one of my PhD students that we worked on it. But the main idea was to make that touch sensor human skin-like, human-like. And, at IIT Madras, you have a touch lab. So it can be done here in IIT Madras. It can be done at Johns Hopkins. And we need to bring the human ability. By the way, not necessarily human. Sometimes even the animals, creatures, birds, and even simple things like a snake or a centipede has enormous capabilities, sensory and otherwise, that we in biomedical engineering generally try to mimic to bring in new capabilities into the machine. So, there are a lot of possibilities.
And pain. Will you be able to get a painometer anytime?
Yeah, no, when we wrote that paper, the most intriguing part of this was a paper in Science Robotics. And of course, we thought we were describing a lot of these touch and sensor and robotics and prosthetics. But we implemented a range from innocuous, which is mild touch, to noxious, which is noxious, which is pain. And pain is what intrigued most. So when you really think about it, what is our human skin for? It's really to protect ourselves. It's like a barrier to the body. But it's also, why do we have pain? So that we avoid injury to our skin or our rest of our body, whether from heat or from sharp objects. And we must feel it, right? So people associate pain with, of course, health, disease, and it's a major problem, but also perception of pain. So how do you incorporate into it? So one little idea that we incorporated is like a reflex. So if I touch a sharp object, I'll react. And we implemented that. And that was a way to manifest the idea that machines can feel pain. But I think there is a long way to go. The big unknown right now, as I said, unknown unknowns is, in fact, what is pain and how do we perceive and what it is somebody who's a cancer patient feels pain, or we feel emotional pain, or we feel physical noxious pain. And I think it's one of the great unknowns and major area of research and even use of technology.
Let's switch gears and talk about your own lab and the culture in a lab like yours. You are a fellow of the National Academy of Inventors. So you've had quite a bit of experience translating work out of your lab into value creation for society. Tell us a little bit about, in this field of biomedical engineering, what does a startup look like? How long does it take? What is the process by which you can sort of build a startup in this space?
Yeah, so firstly, I want to make sure people understand there's certain certain ethos where some people are inventors and some people are entrepreneurs and some people are scientists and so on. And most people do job and life and career. When I was at IIT, actually as a senior, final year student, like many, I would apply to American colleges. But I heard from a couple of IIT alumni who talked about their entrepreneurship, and it just turned me on. Like, oh my God, maybe I could do that. So I dropped the idea of going to graduate school and say I'll do startup.
This is 70s.
70s.
Wow.
Now that said, it's India, right? You come from business families, you have certain DNA, and I come from a very nerdy academic family. A couple of years I realized that I didn't have the gene, but I had the inventive mindset. Anyway, so I did PhD. I love research. I want to educate. I want to mentor. But the entrepreneurship within remains. And I do that surrogately through my students who take idea forward and start a company, which is how we started a company for brain monitoring or another for prosthetics. And even now, there's a conversation going on with a clinical colleague about monitoring the brain unobtrusively, like say from your ear.
Okay.
That's a crazy idea, and we are in the process of inventing that. So I think it is something that is in your DNA, where you are curious, you are interested, you want to discover. I mean, that's a scientist or an inventor. But there are others who said, yeah, that's good, but I want to make it into product. I want to sell it. I want to distribute it. I want to scale it up. I want to make money. All of that is quite good. And it's up to an individual to grab it. What you don't want to do is like a herd, go get a degree that's popular, go get a job, and somehow middle class life is done, right? Then you're not doing this invention and entrepreneurship. Invention and entrepreneurship are both a risk. But when you're young, take your chances, right? And explore. So my favorite, I can say that even it ties to prosthetics, to close the loop. So when I was a graduate student, the first Star Wars movie came. Yes. And it was in that Star Wars movie, Luke Skywalker, this young man, his arm got cut up by the laser wand with Darth Vader, was his father. But anyway, and there they showed a prosthetic arm in that video. I still use it in my talk as a motivator. Somewhere a movie. So in fact, I tell students, today's homework to all of you, go and watch first Star Wars movie and you'll see what I'm talking about, and it gets you going, right? And what Star Wars, of course, starts with saying, go where no man has gone before. So I just wanted to say that it's movie, it's fun to make a comment like that, but it is life, right? Go where nobody has gone before.
No, these are elements that motivate all of us to do something. We see something that's so far out there in the world of science fiction that we say, let me take a shot at it. Now, take prosthetics as an example back again. You invented a more sensory prosthetic limb. Now you are translating it into a startup. What's the next 1 or 2 steps after the invention has been perfected?
Yeah, it is incredibly serendipitous. It is also both intellectual, but also very pragmatic. And we are at that fork where the answer is unclear. So firstly, think about the sensory prosthetics. So if you ask an amputee, it's not what they need. Their biggest problem is what you asked me, pain, something called phantom limb pain. They feel a phantom pain of where they are, which is almost impossible to understand and treat. Other things
Incidentally, we had Professor V.S. Ramachandran here come give a talk on phantom limbs. Yes, of course,
he is very famous for that illusions that he has created because we can feel an arm that doesn't exist. Yeah. And he is a famous neurologist. So, exactly. And the mechatronic prosthetic has taken a lot of interest in people. A number of companies are making it. But in the end, what I said, the need is there, the invention is there, but the pragmatism gets us into trouble because there are only so many amputees. So it's not a terrific business proposition.
Yes.
Which means to make a product into revenue generating, scalable, the proposition is very difficult to prove that maybe that is a need. And where there is a need, there is no money. Where wars are, poor countries where fights are occurring, where there is money, there is no need, like countries like US and elsewhere. So we are struggling with scaling up. So interestingly, even I started to think, and it's quite often I find surprised that I am the instigator, where students are they listen to my work or paper and they want to work for prosthetic hand. It's very altruistic. And I have, as we speak, started to shift to designing this kind of touch sensor for the foot. Now, if you put that sensor in your foot, you can now sense or monitor the gait. You said, okay, that's interesting. But that's not just for amputees, right? People lose sensation because of diabetes. It's rampant today in India and worldwide. And there is something called diabetic neuropathy, which means that, again, because of diabetes, your nerves get damaged, the blood flow gets damaged, and you lose a sense of touch, a feeling. And a lot of diabetes, people must know around, either lose their vision or eventually their legs get amputated. So if you could bring a sense of touch back to a person who is diabetic, then they may not lose their leg. Suddenly, that's a huge market. So what I'm saying is that altruism and research is part of what we do. People like us who are academic or PhDs. Invention is converting into a product or technology. But an entrepreneur must then convert into a successful business model, appropriate for their world, environment, unmet need with economics. So, you have to be economically and entrepreneurially minded to make a success out of this. And who knows, it'll change and something new from even this conversation may come up.
In this world of, I'll call it healthcare startups, what are the sort of the big challenges? There may be regulatory issues that a startup needs to overcome. There are market issues. You mentioned scalability issues because some of these tend to be very niche. How would you develop the mindset to remain, in your idea and move it forward?
Yeah. Technologies can be broken up into different categories, but something called deep tech. Deep tech is where advanced science, engineering, technology research, like going out at IIT or Johns Hopkins, take on hard problem, create a breakthrough out of which a transistor or laser or robot or brain-machine interface comes. And there are a lot of practical tech that are consumer level that can be invented and scaled up by anyone. So the deep tech faces exactly the challenge that you mentioned. They are sometimes niche. They are very cutting edge, expensive. So even a company like Meta struggles with getting the virtual reality out as a consumer product. And even one or two generation, now maybe they come up with glass. If you recall, Google came up with what are called Google Glass, but it was ahead of time. Apple came out with, actually Steve Jobs came out with the iPad-like device, was LCD black and white. It was ahead of its time and didn't succeed until the phone and then iPad became successful. And now maybe these glasses are just beginning to crack. So that is the challenge with deep tech, that, sometimes you're a pioneer and you succeed or fail. We see this happening with autonomous cars. We see that with a lot of AI. Medical is a little bit different and adds another layer of complexity, safety of any medical product, efficacy, does it do what it's supposed to do? Those are the two things that are regulated. FDA, which is a food drug agency in America, which sets the model for the rest of the world, looks for safety and efficacy. And it's harder to prove. You need to do clinical trial to prove that they are safe and effective. And those are costly. So sometimes medical world has its very high level of cost and burden for the sake of safety and efficacy. And it's a part of the process along with everything else, scalability, economics, all of that. And again, that is, entrepreneurship is just that. You overcome these problems. And if it is a barrier to entry, right, that's an opportunity actually when you think about it, because a lot of people will get deterred. But so once you crack through that, there are few companies who can make a pacemaker for the heart, or now there is similar for the brain to treat Parkinson. But once you cracked it, you are in that unique world. And India doesn't have those kind of biomedical engineering oriented medical device and companies in a scale that the world has. And again, when I think of India, everybody's thinking about vaccines and drugs and all of that. Where is the medical device industry of the comparable nature?
Yes.
Maybe that's the opportunity, right? I mean, because if you go down the same path, you're part of the crowd holding a mediocre job.
Yes.
And competing for low-level drug clones and so on. Or you can pioneer some technology that your entrepreneurship can break through and could be useful for India in one way or for the worldwide use. I think that's the innovation and entrepreneurship.
That's a wonderful message. India can become the device testing lab for the world and the device production industry for the world as well. Because all it requires in today's world is bright minds coming in and becoming excited by one of the ideas.
And India has a scale.
India has scale.
Remember the
Yes.
need and the scale.
Yes.
Which allows certain things to scale at a very, very broad level, right? So if this kind of little device in the ear or the foot I'm doing, testing on 100,000 patients who have diabetes is almost no problem in India, relatively speaking, by sheer scale and sheer need, right? So I think you may always think that India doesn't have this, but you can also think India has this, right? So India has scale of need and patience, and also what now world covets data, the medical data and data science, because of that scale is available and need is there. Economics may be different, and that's, again, I would treat it as an opportunity, right?
Yes. For the quality of healthcare we have in India, I think the price we pay is very low. It must be one of the best deals in the world. Let's switch gears and talk of AI. You mentioned data science. AI in this world of biomedical engineering. Um, this is an absolutely fast growing market as a for an inventor or an entrepreneur to step in. But from a research perspective also, there are many challenges. I want to sort of dumb it down. Why is it that an AI model is not unleashed to read a chest X-ray yet? Why do we still need a radiologist?
Well, I would kind of question that, because I think it's getting challenged that whether X-ray or retinal scan or something, AI might do better than a lot of physician. But it's a question of what is better, right? Certain type of learned and trained, maybe, but certain deep judgment that an expert physician, a radiologist or ophthalmic surgeon will bring, an AI can't, right? So we have to know there are nuances there. I think that's sort of the fundamental issue, that people, as your words, dumb it down, right? I mean, so currently something really high caliber computer science is dumbed down as IT, and IT is just typing code or analyzing some number data from a bank or whatever, right? And a computer science is mathematical algorithms that solve difficult problems. So I think the same thing with AI. There's a dumbed down version of AI, which is ChatGPT and other things that you can use for an application. So I ask a question and AI looks up all the data they've scoured to give you a quick answer. It used to be, it could be dictionary, it was encyclopedia, then it was Google, and now it's AI.
Yeah.
There's a smart AI, which is that algorithm deep inside that Google inventors created. There are now deeper algorithms from some of these companies. And that part of mathematics and computer science is where the breakthrough is occurring. And most of us are in between. Probably we are going to be users of AI. So coming back to your question about medical images and medical data, the way the current AI is structured is going to be continually getting better. That's the breakthrough it occurred, that it can keep learning the more the data. So it's data dependent. And if we get a lot more x-rays, AI gets a lot more x-rays or retinal scans, it'll come out with astonishingly good results that all but a very small fraction of experts might be able to come up with and do that. And that will happen. A spell checker that is computerized will do better than me as a human spell checker. So nothing wrong with it. But a high-end poetry may not be conceived by AI. And so intuition and experience of a physician and surgeon and expert may still take a while to replicate. I think the two will have to go hand in hand. And I think we have to adopt AI in everything we do. But AI will have to evolve to keep getting better. I think this is an evolutionary process. Probably, revolution that you are in the middle of it and not know it. This is I was in the middle of a microprocessor revolution and didn't know it.
Yes.
And today it's ubiquitous, right? And you just adopt something early, new, exciting, even innocently. And today, maybe it is this, and maybe there is something over and beyond that is in the minds of all the people here.
So, at least we've bought into the idea of AI in our lives, thanks to ChatGPT and others. So tomorrow, if let's say an MRI machine came enabled with an AI interpreter, from the patient's perspective and even from the doctor's perspective, I think we would be broadly receptive. As you said, the first battle has already been won in some way, right? Is it a good thing? And where is this headed? Or should we be slightly more skeptical of AI?
Well, let me just give an anecdotal example. My wife, who's a practicing physician, for her, everything is good until something new is imposed. And it's okay. So her daily routine is to see the patients, write charts, the doctor handwriting. It used to be that somebody in India would scribe it. That got replaced by electronic reader.
Mm-hmm.
Then it got replaced by typing it into a tick, tick, tick. She would slowly type. And just about few months ago, now she got an AI. Oh, before that it was speech. So she would talk and it would do a lousy job of speech recognition. Now she has an AI software that listens to her and transcribes it. But it's smart enough to take out personal dialogue between doctor and physician to keep it to medical. And it's smart enough to be multilingual, which means any communication done in any Indian languages to an Indian patient is either translated or converted, right? And she's adopting it zestfully. So I think, answer to your question, most of it will be like this. Now, at any point, misuse can occur or mistakes can occur, right? When she dictates, AI can mistakenly put words. That has happened to me when I dictate on my phone, and transcription is sometimes it's bad. And I have to error correct it, or it could be damaging. But there can be also, obviously, at any level, unethical use. Our robotic arm, prosthetic arm is bionic arm to a word called cyborg, which is a notion that it's some kind of a robotic machine that is bigger, stronger, smarter than people and will conquer the world, right? You watch those movies.
Sure.
And like any technology, this has always been the case. Whether it's a car, it can be driven to take you somewhere, or it can run over and create an accident. A autonomous vehicle is going through that same transition phase where technology is feasible, but one accident is too much to trust an AI in an autonomous car. And I think medical diagnosis, you asked about X-ray reading. What if that AI makes a mistake?
Yes.
Somebody suffers. But what if a doctor makes a mistake? And the question is the doctor likely to make more mistakes?
Or the AI?
Or AI. Is the autonomous vehicle failure rate is lower, or our driver's mistakes and error? I think you'd be surprised what the correct answer is. So therefore, I think we have to embrace the technology with suitable checks and balances. That's the job often of government. Similarly, in medicine, often the job of ethicists to kind of provide, at least if not a reminder, and a regulatory bodies who say, is it safe? Is it effective? And I think it's a kind of a lockstep arrangement. Advancement occurs, but stop and think.
Let's talk about the university system in biomedical engineering. When you were a student at IIT Bombay, my research says that there was probably no undergrad biomedical engineering program in India for sure. Today, almost every university worth its weight in salt has an undergrad BS biomedical engineering program. What is good about having a biomedical engineering program? I know. I mean, let's ask ourselves that question. I mean, what does a student learn in biomedical engineering, and where does it take them?
Yeah, maybe let me answer that first, and then we can be a bit more philosophical. So, biomedical engineering. So almost all applicants at the end of it are more engineers. They are quantitative. They have some, at that young age, some appreciation of engineering, not a lot. I was young and I was enamored by electronics, so I became electrical engineer. But to be honest, you could be any engineer. Mechanical engineers can do artificial hearts. Material science, metallurgy can build implantable materials. Chemical engineers can study thermal and thermodynamic processes and create insulin pump. So any engineering is valid. But because today biology has become even more dominant, right? At institutions like MIT and elsewhere, they require 1 year of biology because it is so central to all aspects of sciences and engineering, where you need to learn about DNA and genes and cells, and then later on diseases. So biology and medical, which means health, disease, and so on. So basically, a biomedical engineer, to answer to your question, need to be quite versatile, quite interdisciplinary, should not get locked into one thing, and should be able to multidisciplinary way integrate together. You can come from any angle, from biology, neuroscience, electrical engineering, material science, and start integrating. So this might surprise you, but after doing biomedical engineering, you and I as professors, and we talk about engineering and invention and all of that, a lot of biomedical engineers in US at least go to medical school. About 10% of medical students are now bioengineers, physicists, etc., or do MD, PhD, so combined MD and PhD. But otherwise, a predominant will go into industry and consulting. Biomedical engineers become really great consultants, and even I can think of my students who got pulled into investment to make the decision on where future technologies and sciences is going, because they're very well grounded on multidisciplinary manners. They're quantitative, so they think analytically, and then they apply to big finance or big entrepreneurship or medicine.
This is a world that, touches every one of us, healthcare as a topic, right? And the number of biomedical engineers we graduate, even globally, is nowhere near the workforce needed. Why do you see? Why is it the way it is?
Yeah, it's first of all, it's the emergence of a new field, right? If you go back 100 years ago, there were physicists, but not electrical engineers. But part of physics was electromagnetics, which became more applied in device and technology. It's during World War is where electrical engineering came to a fore because of radar and encryption and electronics that needed, right? So if physics evolved into electrical engineering, which for me became electronics to biomedical engineering. And today that evolution is happening. I think it is a growth of any scientific discipline. I would contend, and Johns Hopkins is a little bit skewed, it's the hottest of all engineering, more than computer science, data science. Although, again, that pendulum is shifting now. And biomedical engineers are adopting AI and data science, or vice versa. Computer scientists find some of the best challenges in biology and medicine. So I cannot claim any expertise for India, but I personally hear and feel that there is a lot of mass level herd mentality to go into IT, data, that sort of thing, because that's sort of where jobs are, but they are lower strata jobs. They are economically entry point, middle class, entry point jobs. I mean, and that's fair for most people. But to get beyond that, you do need higher education, that what I call integrative knowledge, to be able to put everything together. Look, a lot of people, a very smart businessman puts everything together. They put finances and need and human character and technology together to make a successful startup, even though they may or may not have PhD or MBA, right? So that is what is meant by integrative. But when you do a very narrow education like IT or something, then you don't get that. You get locked into something. So I think biomedical engineering, for that reason, is seen both hard, but I think it's mainly adopting it to see the future. Like this podcast, like yours, probably is doing a great service. If I am successful communicating my excitement, my success to you, you will be turned on. Oh my God, I want to do this, right? And suddenly, whatever your background, you can pick it up into. Essentially, we are doing some science, technology, or application, AI for human health. Like, what better can we do, right? I mean, what can be better? And should it be economically, financially rewarding too? Because we all want to be healthy and live long, right? So, it's just a question of putting it together.
A biomedical engineer today with some grounding in AI, with some training in AI, is far more valuable than an AI engineer who's trying to learn biomedical engineering or trying to enter into healthcare.
Very well put. I mean, extremely well put. And I wish that could be communicated and translated, because, it's like to learn to type. is not the same thing as learning to create a high scholarly text, whether it's essay or a poetry. So it's same way, in some way, programming, data science, or now AI is a tool. Actually, it turns out with AI, now the challenge is the right kind of queries, and then editing it, because it can hallucinate, can create errors, right? So somehow the intelligence will come again in there. So rote anything is not going to help. Like doing something is not going to help, right? So it's where you apply your human ingenuity and creativity.
Sure.
That's going to help.
Is it a good idea to do a master's degree in biomedical engineering or any other chosen discipline? Because this is a fairly deep tech sector, as you said. What's your recommendation on graduate level studies?
Yeah, I think you touched on something useful and practical. To be honest, I agree with you. Because in India, the shift to biomedical engineering is only gradually occurring at IIT and ISC and places like that. Even there, India went through this biotechnology, which is very different, or bioscience is very different. It's more geared to pharma and all that. So that evolution educationally is going to take time. It's evolving. I think that's probably equally true even in Europe and elsewhere. US is way ahead in that regard. And biomedical engineering is institutionalized everywhere. It's probably the most, as I said, hottest, although now AI, computer science is catching up once again. It went through ups and downs and up. Those things can happen. So during this phase, your suggestion is, I agree with you, that take any undergraduate background. It honestly doesn't matter, although preferably engineering, and then get a master's in biomedical engineering to shift your mindset to biomedical way of thinking, problem solving, using your engineering approach. Where you have to be careful is that degree alone isn't enough. It's just a 1 year of coursework to learn something and maybe one project you can do. Right. What you do with it may not be easy. It may be very difficult, or it may be incredibly entrepreneurial. So let's break it down. You took courses, in my case, like the BTech project or heart monitor. But there's no company making heart monitor. So I may not just quickly get a job just to do that. So that's why it can be difficult. Or they may not recognize my talent, or maybe I'm just still too inexperienced. But it could equally be entrepreneurial. If I have that zest and ethos, I could start a company to do that.
Yes.
And suddenly, what is to prevent anyone? Today, watches, Apple Watch and all that, are starting to incorporate health information. It started with counting steps. Then maybe it can pick up, temperature or activity, calculate calorie. But now it can record electrocardiogram with a button attached to it and so on. And from there, it can detect certain arrhythmias, abnormal rhythm. And I think it's going to come to look if there is a sweat on the skin, it'll analyze it, and those things will happen. So you can understand that it's not too far, but it's far. And I think somebody with a master's degree today will be in India, I think, will be a bit of a pioneer, because of the existence of large medical technology companies may be limited. There'll be more room today of innovators, entrepreneurs, I think. Again, sure. I'm not an expert, but I think you should go with that entrepreneurial spirit. I think India needs PhD scientists and educators like you and me to inspire and teach the next generation, while the rest of the ecosystem catches up.
I think a master's degree or a postgraduate degree broadly, or deeper education, gives serendipity a greater chance. You are seeing a broader spectrum of problems and topics, and potentially
and it gives you a greater rigor. Look, there's nothing wrong with a college dropout starting a company like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, but those are rare, astonishing successes. And it's also not too many PhD scientists who do years of that and start a company. So there is somewhere in between is an optimum, a young BTech who starts, which is very common now.
Yes.
But maybe an MTech master's is more enlightened and mature to make some deep tech, wiser decisions. But you still, at whatever stage and age, you must have that entrepreneurial zeal or creativity to want to do that. That it's in you, right? It's epiphany that occurs whenever.
Let's come back to the doctor's office. We started talking about that. Today, if I go into a doctor's office and the person uses no stethoscope, no blood pressure monitor, just checks my pulse, feels me, and writes down a prescription, I feel very uneasy. We've reached the exact opposite end of where intuition was to be rewarded. Today, I'm almost expecting the lack of it. Is that what has medical education? Where has medical education gone in this space?
Well, I should be careful. I'm not a medical doctor. Maybe my wife should sit here and give that answer. Yes, I think in some way medical education has become so rich with information, just so much knowledge and information from basic biology to biochemistry to genetics to devices and technology and now AI, that no reasonable human being, a doctor, can capture all of that. So they are then today assisted by technology in the sense of patient records, CT and MRI images, medical devices that give you information, and so on. So, of course, a practicing doctor that doesn't use any of that is a huge outlier and probably way behind. The flip side is not obvious, and that is a doctor that is just looks at your patient record, data, images, doesn't even look at you and palpate you and give a diagnosis. You have that other extreme. Or maybe, if I heaven forbid, instead of going family physician who checks you out, all your information is scanned like this, one machine to another, goes into the record, AI gives interpretation, prescribes medicine. I don't think that's out of question. For legal reasons, they might put a doctor just to check a little bit, to double check, maybe just to authorize. And both are doctors without technology and indiscriminate use of computer data, AI. These are all difficult scenario, right? An ideal scenario is a doctor assisted by useful technology who is also now assisted by AI search. Within a quickly, they can augment their knowledge base with what's in the AI and use a combined judgment, because you are a single individual patient with unique problem.
Yes.
That cannot be completely matched by AI data or one machine's output.
Yes.
But a doctor without that information, going deep into your body to look at your X-ray or MRI cannot just look at you and give a judgment.
Yes.
And I think perhaps this is a simplistic way to divide the world into East-West, but the certain Western approach is over-reliance on technology, and a certain Eastern approach is over-reliance on traditions, and my grandparent or some Maharishi or somebody always used to do that, and you have the traditional practices which are traditional. Maybe they are good, but they have not been validated, right?
Sure.
So, and Western medicine is so-called validated but it's kind of like one pill for everyone. And we have to find a balance.
Very well put. Very well put. I think a human in the loop, AI-assisted, technology-assisted physician should be our go-to in the long run.
Yeah.
You were telling me earlier that you picked up painting as a hobby. I don't know if it's now your passion as well during COVID. Why did you do that?
Yeah, in fact, I'm surprised why didn't I do much more before. I was painting in school. I had a fantastic teacher who I'm told there was a movie made about him. It was Professor Nikum, who inspired art in us, or people like me. And then life happens to all of us, right? You study a lot, job, career, and you leave behind certain hobbies and passion. And during COVID, we are at home. At that time, my mother was very sick, so I was actually very much at home. And I took it up and retook it. And today, I have a demanding full-time job. And when I come home, my wife asks, "So, how did you do your job today?" And sarcastically or laughingly, she means, what did I paint today, as opposed to what academic work that I did today. And what I feel to all of us, what I'm finding is an incredible balance in life, sort of a certain healthiness to it. And also, it is creative. I see world around me is so beautiful. Like anywhere I stop and it's, oh, that tree looks beautiful. And I take a photograph, so maybe I should paint it. Or here we saw deer on IIT Madras campus. And all of a sudden, it's a beautiful scene to capture. Now, academic part of me never leaves me, and therefore I see some opportunity when I visit the lab, and so I could do that research. And so I think this is part of us. Yesterday, I went to a beautiful Carnatic music concert. I'm not a musician. I don't know the language. It was spectacular. And that people relate to music, right? Lot more people, Bollywood to Indian Idol or whatever. People relate a little less to the art. It's seen as esoteric thing in galleries, but people appreciate it when it's in a good sari or a good decoration at home. So I think finding that balance is very good for everyone. I think young people also, they need to be emotionally healthy, and that emotional health can come from many things, including art.
And, as I said earlier, you are a fellow of the National Academy of Inventors. There's a healthy dose of creativity in any invention.
I'm almost guess, I've never mentioned this to anyone in my family or something, but maybe when I pass on, they might say, dad or uncle or friend or father, oh, I remember his paintings because I paint and I send it to them. I don't think any one of them is going to remember for a particular research paper or my National Academy. So I think it's you're a professor, I'm a professor. These audience might be educated, learning, young people building a life and a career. And I'm sure it's good for them to focus on their education and what career it builds. And I'm sure some of you will become Newtons and Einsteins and so on, and some of you will become fantastic musician and artists, which seems to happen to people after a while. They revert to their norms. So why don't we see us as all more multidimensional, not by our pedigree, IIT or National Academy, but a father, a husband, somebody who loves art, things like that, right? We are all multidimensional, as I'm sure you are, as everyone on the audience is.
That's a wonderful note to leave this conversation at. We all need to grow into becoming more multidimensional personalities, and persona. Thank you so much, Nitish, for coming on this conversation. I really believe biomedical engineering in India particularly is just burgeoning. It's at the cusp of its exponential growth. And I hope this conversation will help a small group of really bright young women and men to pivot into careers in biomedical engineering.
I hope so. And, I could end with saying, I feel like I could be one of them because it's so damn exciting to do all this. It's just that years have passed on and, but I could restart. I could reboot, come back to being a student and of either engineering or AI or art. And I think that youthfulness keeps me going. So I hope all of you will take that and take it up and be a great biomedical engineer, or what's next. My 1970s experience, or here I am, right? And world is moving faster and smarter and quicker. So who knows where you will be. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you, Nitish. This has been another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, brought to you by IITM Global, an initiative of the Office of Global Engagement at IIT Madras. Thank you all for listening. Until the next episode, be well, do good, and keep in touch. Goodbye.